All right, we're done. We're here. Yay. I'm happy to be done. Anyways, we will be showing you, or I will be showing you, how to bake a normal map, right? You wanted to see that? So who has tried to bake a normal map? Did it work? Mixed reviews. Yeah. And this is always the thing with baking. Either it works or it doesn't, and there usually doesn't, and there will be errors, and you have to bake again, and then some weird thing happens, and then you have to bake another time. It's always the case. I don't know. It's just baking. Usually not a very straightforward thing. So let's bake a normal map. So who can explain what a normal map is? Uh, Give it a go. What does a normal map do? Yeah, it holds information about the curvature. Yeah, you could say the depth. I guess I wouldn't phrase it that way. But yeah, it holds information about the curvature. In what curvature of what? Yep. So we remember there's something called phase normals. It's not very big on that indication there, but that's basically just telling you which direction the polygon is pointing. That way. That's a normal. The thing with the normal is that it tells the render or the real-time GPU render also in which direction should the light reflect, right? So this is reflecting light in one direction. So if you make a sphere, just that polygonal primitive, we can see, that looks very smooth. Why does it look so smooth? It's a nice sphere, right? Why is it so smooth? It doesn't look so high poly. It looks so smooth because Maya just figures that, okay, you're making a sphere, so you probably want to look at it be a nice sphere. So what it does is that it actually softens the edges. But I can go in here and set hard edges. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong thing. I can go in here and set the normals to not be softened, but hardened. Now we're actually seeing a more kind of predictable result because now each of these polys are reflecting light in one direction. So they're all reflecting light in their own little direction. And I can go display polygons. This is just to display the phase normals, right? It really just it's a little line that points exactly in the direction of the normal. So that's what Maya does when you create that spherical primitive. It's just that, okay, you probably want it to be smooth, so it just softens the edges. So that's kind of averaging out the normals. So it's making an average of all these normals, and it's kind of bending the light more gradually along that surface. So wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to bend the normal across the polygonal face without there being more polys? Right? Wouldn't that be nice? That's what a normal map does. So we can have one polygon and bend the light every which way. Starting to make sense? Yes? No? Yeah? Okay. Anyways, all that said, just ignore everything. Now we'll actually do it. We'll try to bake. So I think the best way to explain this is we'll try to bake. We'll put a sphere in there. So, or half a sphere, I guess. Let's cut it in half. We'll cut it in half. Hello. Let's do that. Let's make it smaller, like that. Just so we have that little bit of a surface detail there. And just flip that around. Yeah, that'll be nice. Okay, and then to bake this thing, so this is just a polygonal plane. It has UVs. It has UVs just because that's how the plane works. It just has UVs perfectly laid out in 0 to 1, so it fills this entire region perfectly. So we don't have to worry about the UVs for a plane. Then we go and we have to find rendering, lighting, shading, transfer maps. This is the little thing that we have to use, transfer maps. So now that you start working with textures and you're baking and you know, this is kind of important that you actually make a Maya project. So this is also very handy if you're migrating different computers or you're here and there, and then you just bring the entire Maya project with you, because then that will have all the texture files and everything. So the paths will be correct. So then we go here, project window, say new, and we're gonna go my computer. Oh wow, middle of November. Baking. Let's see. Okay, so there's something called target meshes. The target mesh is the mesh, your final mesh that has UVs, right? So it could be one mesh or multiple meshes combined or whatever. Anything that you want to bake to target. So in this case, that simple little plane is the target. Yeah, okay, let's go on with this. We have these guys will be, oh, and also kind of nice before you do all this, just delete history, freeze transformations. You make sure Maya will be happy, and then we select these and add the source measures. And this will be sampling in world space. So it will be looking around this plane, and it will literally just, you can include anything you want there. The sampling is happening in world space. So in this case, just a couple of spheres. And here you see we could make a normal map, a displacement map, diffuse map, all these things. We're going to do a normal map. So, yeah, it doesn't matter where you put it. Put it in images for now. And we could do a TIFF for any, I'll just do a PNG. Normal little PNG. This will be baking. No, this will be spheres. No, this will be plane. Normal map. So yeah, whatever naming convention you want to use, like underscore NRM or normal. A lot of people use NRM. Doesn't matter. Just, yeah, there. And then PNG, it should be a tangent space normal map. Tangent space, most likely. There's also object space, but tangent space. in 90% of cases. Connect maps to shader. We want Maya common outputs. So we could do a 2K 2048 times 2048 or 4096 if you want to do 4K. I would recommend baking at higher resolutions than you necessarily need. So if your final output is 256 or whatever little tiny texture, I would still bake it at higher. And then, so here, see, it's going to transfer in world space, so that's what we want. So sampling quality, whatever, medium, high, there. Filter, this is basically just a blur that it will add to the thing. So yeah, don't want to increase that too much. There we go. Pretty straightforward setup. You just have to kind of look over it. And then, as long as you have the help line open here in the UI elements, let's see. So in your UI elements, you know, the help line, that's where you'll see a little indicator of where this process is going. Yeah, so now we're gonna bake, and then usually when we bake, we then go and buy a coffee or pastries. Now it's gonna start. Yeah, that's really it for baking. The thing to be careful with, one consideration actually, well, let's try to, we'll bake something that makes more sense after this. Oh, map, yep. Don't know why it's taking horribly long. So there are different baking solutions. There are different softwares. You could bake anywhere. So all you need the low poly version, and then you need the high poly version. Bring those two things together, and you can bake. And the low poly one needs UVs, obviously. So there are applications like XNormal, which only bakes. That's the whole thing. That's the purpose of the software. It only bakes. So it's a good solution for baking. Others, I don't think we have it here. You could bake probably in Blender or Max or ZBrush. And they vary a little bit. Maya's particularly slow. So that's all I have to say about that. But you can get pretty good normal maps out of here if you just keep going. But this is taking too long. So if you hit escape frantically, usually, yeah, so that can cancel the process. Just keep hitting escape. So that's strange. Transfer maps. Let's see if it actually... No, there's nothing there. Let's try again. Well, try to bake a little one. See if it just will actually do it. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, there's nothing wrong here, so it's just like, maybe it's too early. Bake. Yep. So this might turn out to be a long lecture. If it's... What? What? Okay. So... Yeah, it actually baked it. So we just did a TIFF this time. Let's take a look at it in Photoshop. Yeah, yeah. And things are taking a while on this computer. That's not a good bake. This is a good bake. This one. That one. The top one should work fine. Mm, this one is not. Oh, of course not, because I would have to. Yeah. So, anyways, the simple example is turning out to be more complex and taking more time than I thought. But here, when I cut that in half, you see that, of course, this is not going to work very nicely because I actually want that bottom part to be kind of a part of the normal map. So then I would have to go in here and flip the normals. So, reverse. Reverse the normals, and then the bake should work more nicely. So, let's try it one more time. Save. This will make more sense eventually, I hope. I'm gonna add these. So, plane, normal map. Let's do number 2. Bake. Yes. Yeah, you seem excited. That's good. Sarcasm works in the morning. Let's see. There we go. Plane, normal map 2. Yeah, look at that. So that's nicer. You see why that's nicer? No, but you just see the colors. The colors, when you see colors like this, those are not nice colors. So you can see that it just uses the color wheel, right? And forever which color along the color wheel, it will actually bend light in that particular direction. So if you can imagine this is the sphere, this color will bend the light that way. And this color is the same, so it also bends the light that way. Right? And if we can, that makes sense because that's exactly what we want. If we want to create the illusion that these were here, even if they're not. And here comes the trick. So now Control H, just to hide them, and we're going to look at the normal map applied to this. So I think it should have connected it. Yeah, so it connects it to a Lambert. So here you can see something goes into the little thing here called bump mapping. There it goes. And we can follow the link. Then now we're in the file node, and there's the normal map. I can turn off the filter. This is just another blur. Don't want that. And then this is very important. So we have to turn this into raw. Technically, it's not a raw image, but we don't want it to treat it as an sRGB because it will add another, D gamma on the thing. Another topic here. So then we can press 6. Ooh. Oh, this is crazy. Right? That's pretty crazy because they're not there. It's an illusion. Whoa. But of course, if we go down here, oh, the illusion broke because it's actually not gonna displace anything. Remember, it's just pointing the normal around. But it's very ingenious. It's ingenious. It's very simple, very efficient, and it just bends that normal. So now the limitation is not the poly count. the limitation would be the resolution of your normal map. So this is just a 512 little normal map. So you can see it starts breaking apart. But if we had baked it at 4K, obviously we can go closer, right? So all depends on the resolution of the normal map, which is here completely relative, right? Because this is just 0 to 1, but this could be anything. You could bake 8K, 4K, 2K, whatever you want to do. And they're also kind of nice if we change this material. Let's change it to blend, so we'll see some. So you can see also it will give you those specular highlights. Nice. Then we can add a light. Let's add a directional light. We'll press number 7. And then we'll rotate the light. Yeah. Questions? Yeah. Yeah. So, other considerations, if you had, let's say, your low poly mesh had more polys, it might actually be a good idea to soften the normals on the low poly target mesh before you bake. Otherwise, you can sometimes see that these hardened edge result would appear in your normal map. So if you kind of see these edges in your normal map, you can remember, aha, maybe I should go here and say soften edge on the low poly target mesh before you bake. Anyways, yeah, but that's really it. The basics of normal maps. But let's try to apply this to something that makes a little more sense. So we will, you know, I guess use some of the exciting. Let's see. CGR1 chair. Nice. Yay. Remember this? So we were making UVs for it and having fun. Very important also for the baking is that you don't have overlapping UVs. And that they're inside their regions, or well, in this case, one region, so inside 0 to 1. If they're not, the bake will fail. Or not necessarily, but could fail. Okay, so this would be more work, right? Just oh, I want to keep that one. But we have UVs, so that's the thing. So before you bake, you obviously do need to have a final version of your normal map. Otherwise, there's no need to bake because you're obviously baking to the normals, and then you just have to bake again. So this is not a perfect normal map. You see here, there's unused space and so forth. I think we talked about that. But how would you even approach this? So I mentioned last time, yeah. So this is a multi-mesh asset. It has a lot of, not a lot, but a few meshes, right? So sometimes I see people do this, and you go and combine the thing. You don't have to do that. Well, you can. It will just combine everything to one like Maya object, right? But here you still have all the meshes, and I can click on all the meshes. It's just that they're in this group, and so if I want to select the whole chair, I select the group. Also, a nice way to sort of select the chair would be to select its material. So here I can make another material. So we'll do a Lambert. So this would be the chair material. And it becomes a nice way to quickly, I can select objects with material, and that will select this entire asset and, of course, its UV layout. So I'm treating this as one object in my head, right? Even though it consists of several meshes. So, okay. So when we try to start baking this, though, I can treat these individual objects and just bake that part and then bake another part. Because chances are you might encounter more errors if you had a bunch of meshes and then baked everything at once. Not necessarily might work, but probably or usually they're, you know, like I said, with baking, there's just some errors. Usually you can sort of bake again, and then. So I think it would make more sense, at least for me, to probably do the baking individual on these objects. So currently there's nothing to bake because we don't have any detail. There's nothing there. It's just a very, very, very simple chair. So if you have a very, very, very simple asset, you don't have to bake anything. There's nothing there. The only thing that will show up is obviously the tertiary small details, a little surface detail. Uh, so you can't go too crazy with normal maps because obviously it doesn't really displace anything. It just kind of bends the normal. So, but let's try something. So we can add a little, maybe add a little like cushion-like thing and see if that will turn up. So I'm just copying that mesh. So here there's a bevel on it. Maybe I don't want the bevel right now. Can anyone tell me a simple way to get rid of those bevels? Anyone? Creative suggestions? Yes. So that would be kind of the, yeah. Of course, you can double click everything and control backspace, delete them. Yeah, not too bad. Anyone else? You're in the lead so far. We can merge everything. Probably. I don't know. Let's see. Merge. Yeah. Because depending on the merge threshold, right? There is a merge threshold. This is kind of a radius in which all the vertices will be merged. So if this were set too high, it will merge everything into like a vert. You don't want that. But depending on the threshold, it will just grab all the verts and merge them. And so usually if you have like bevels and things, the vertices will be very close, right? So I can just merge the whole thing. Anyways, so yeah. So I can just do a subdivide on that, and yeah, that could be the basis for kind of a pillow kind of shape or something. So we'll smooth that guy. Yeah, close enough. And maybe we'll, yeah, so I can't, yes, I could, I could do that, but if I try to bake that, the illusion might work from here. Here, the illusion will work because, just imagine now that this would be a normal map. It would bend the normals. As long as I'm not kind of going over the contour here, if I go there, I can see the contours of this thing. And obviously that would just be flat. The normal map can never make that illusion, and over here it would be nothing, right? So depending on how extreme this, I can sort of envision how this might work just by going like this. Where will the viewer be? And you get the idea. So let me delete half. And yeah, but here comes, the modeling aspect. So the more detail you manage to put in there, and obviously all the work that you did. Maybe we'll add a little. Oh no. Oh no. I broke it. Yeah. So the beauty of adding these details that will just be baked into the map is that you don't have to worry about the UVs at all for them. And you also don't really have to worry at all about the poly count because they will just be baked down anyways. So the poly count on this guy could be whatever and doesn't need UVs. So whatever you're baking from, the UVs don't matter because you're actually sampling in world space. Do something like that. You get the idea. So the more time you want to spend on that, make that beautiful. And yeah, you could add like buttons or things. You get the idea. Spend more time modeling, which I'm not going to do. But here, however low, that's horrible. We don't do that. So whatever low poly object you want to do, you could still go in there and really add a lot of tertiary detail. So yeah, so we don't have to really worry about UVs. So let's just try to bake that piece and see what it would look like. For this chair, so let's say we want to try to bake, I'd probably be baking at 4K for this, but let's do 2K so we don't have to wait as long. Yes. So we go to rendering, lighting, shading, transfer maps. So we're going to add this one as the target. This will be the source. There's also this surge envelope. So if you just leave it at 0, it will just kind of automatic and it usually works. If you encounter errors, it could be that something's sort of out of bounds. So then you can go here and set this to mesh or to display envelope. Now you're viewing the envelope in which it will search for geometry to be included in the bake. So here you can increase the search envelope and then go back to the mesh. This is just the display. The envelope is still there. Right. So yeah, but only if you see there are some errors or if you have some details that are really kind of extruding quite far from your mesh or something, you can increase it. Otherwise, I would just leave it. And then this. So yeah, so this would be seat normal. And yeah, sure, let's do a TIFF and let's do 2K 2048 times 2048. World space, medium 1, yep. Should work. Nice little thing is just to check if we deleted history. No, it didn't. I'm going to do that. And also I'm going to freeze the transformations. And I'm going to add it again. Oh, that was the source. And this is the target. And so I'm going to hit bake, and then you have to go buy coffee, and we'll take a break. I'm always up for a break. Let's take a break. 10 minutes. Oh, hang on. It might take a short. No, let's take a break. Whatever. All right. There's the map. Did it work? So these are the kinds of colors that we want to see. These are the kinds of colors that we don't want to see. So it partially worked. This actually looks like a very nice bake right here. And that's hopefully the top of the seat. So we can go in here. Where's the UV? Where did you go? If I click here, this should be the top of the seat then. Yep. So let's observe this. mapping. So we need to change this to raw. And then you see the artifacts on the bake. So there's strange things on the bottom, there's strange things on the sides. But it worked. The bake actually worked very nicely. Well, here I'm viewing that one, so we can't really tell. But that's the normal map. So we just have to get rid of the junk, basically. So here I'm gonna just make a new layer. And I can sample this neutral color. So I use the eyedropper tool, sample this color, and then bucket fill. If you hold, I guess it's at the gradient tool initially, so you have to click and hold, and you can select the paint bucket, and then fill the layer. And I'm going to drag this layer on the bottom. Oh, I'm going to open this first, so it has this little. All right. You know Photoshop by now, I guess. Yes. Okay. So anyway, so at the bottom, then just use some sort of lasso tool here. For instance, just get rid of that junk. Really, I don't need this at all, so I'm just gonna get rid of that from that layer, and then Control D to deselect. Here, if you hold spacebar, I can. Oh, so I thought. If you press F once, you can use spacebar and move the canvas around, which is nice. Okay, here. So we got rid of the junk. We have the. This is nice. Great. So this is it. So I'm just gonna maybe then this could be chair. So this is why it might be nice to bake things in TIFFs or targas, because they're not compressed formats. There's no compression. So if you save it as a PNG, there's a compression on the picture, which is it's okay. But then if you open it in Photoshop and I start doing things to this image and then I save out another PNG, you're adding more compression, right? So you're getting kind of that generational loss per, yeah. So it's that's why it's beneficial if you can to bake in TIFFs. And now I could use a TIFF or save out a PNG or whatever. So normal map, I'm gonna put it in source images. And this is where we can just keep working on the normal map. So there we have that bake, and let's just, we're gonna grab the file node here. I'm gonna change this file node to be pointing to the chair normal map PNG. And we have to change this to raw. There we go. So now the errors should be gone. See, there are no errors. And we have that nice illusion that the cushion is there, but there's actually nothing there. So if I press 5, this is what you're actually looking at. Press 6. Fatal error. So that's nice. There was a fatal error. Maya died, in other words, fatally injured. Hello. Yes. So, that's that happens. Especially with Maya, tends to happen. Don't know why. Ah. That's handy. Click the following button. Okay. See if that works. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, it worked. Yep, who knows. Anyways, so you get the idea. And then let's export the UV layout for this chair. So we made that last time, right? Here I can go image UV snapshot. This will literally it's like a screen grab of 0 to 1. It's really just a reference for the UVs. And the resolution could be whatever you want that image to be. This will, of course, in no way limit uh, the resolution you can apply to the object. It's really just this image. Anyways, might as well just call that Udem's. I'm lost again. No, no. What did I call this? It's too early for this. Baking. Yes. So, yeah. So I can put it in images. I can put it in data. Sometimes I like putting things. Oh crap. Sorry. Sometimes I like putting things in data. Uh, the data directory, I just put a lot of crap in there. If you're baking out temporary things or trying things, doesn't matter. So, yep, sure. UV. Yep. So, have you talked about blending modes in Photoshop? Various mixed response, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So this is really just a PNG. You can open it. There it is. And I hit Control A to select everything. Control C, Control W to close it. Control V to paste that in there. And now it's in there. Let me add just a white color paint bucket fill. Oh, it started with okay, transparency. That's okay. Anyways, so Control E, I could paste these together. So I just made a white layer, pasted it together. Control E, and now I can set this to something. Anyways, so set this to multiply. Basically, the white will go away, right? Multiply. The white will go away. Yeah. Or the inverse. So if I copy that and hide that, not multiply this time, but Control I to invert it, and then we can use not multiply but screen, and then you have a white layout. Yeah. So, not a big deal. Just have to make sure that somehow you see the layout. These are the UVs, right? So, um, and this is how you make sense of it. You have to go here and you have to look here and you wonder, I wonder where this is. And so you click those faces and you see they're there. I wonder what's up and what's down. Well, it looks like this is upside down, doesn't it? But anyways, I can click the top edge, which would be that one, and you'll see, yep, sure enough, it's on the bottom. So, we would have taken care of that in the UV mapping stage, but anyways. Not too late to just flip that around, but then probably you want to export another map. So I'm not going to flip it around. So obviously we could bake, I could do the exact same process. Could make another cushion for this area and put it there. Let's try to just, I'll bring this guy over there. Oops. Oh yeah, so this one I want it to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in the move tool, they have this annoying feature. So when this is enabled, I'm trying to move this layer, but I'm moving the wrong layer because this layer is on top. And that's just because this is enabled. So this will automatically select a group by clicking on a visible pixel. This is very, I don't want that. So I'm going to uncheck it, click this layer, and I can move this around. I made a copy of this thing, right? So here, again, I'm just going to isolate it using the magnetic lasso. So I'm just cutting out that backspace to undo a point. So I'm just kind of selecting all the way around. Hello. And then right click, select inverse, backspace to delete, Control D to deselect, and then Control T, I can hold shift and scale this down. Yeah, so that's a horribly strange looking pillow though. But you get the idea. So I could obviously do that if you want to, if you have some elements and you just want to paste them around in your normal map, and then when I update the normal map, it will be there. So whenever you want to change out the normal map, obviously just uncheck this and then save as. Then I'm going to replace the seat normal map PNG. That one. Save. You want to replace it? Yes. Okay. It's going to save it. I also want to save this Photoshop document because that's where I'm actually working with everything. So I'm just going to call that chair PSD. So that would be the Photoshop document in which I'm working. PSD. I actually like to have that in the source images, even though I'm not going to be attaching that PSD directly to a material. It's kind of nice to have that PSD in that directory because everything I save out of Photoshop will automatically kind of go to that directory. So it's kind of convenient. Anyways, so there I saved the PNG, and then we could go to the file node in the material. So go to, so that's handy that the menu here is clipped. There we go. Bump mapping reload. Well, did I not? Okay. Where? Source images. Should be the right one. Source images. Okay, yeah, of course. I do need to apply. This has a different material, I guess. So, because it made a new material when it did the bake, so I have to, that'll be Lambert 7. So you see, very ugly, but it's just, yeah, that works. You can place things around. Now that's there. Make sense? Yes. Yes, yes. And we do have to set it to be raw. So then 5, 6, you can toggle. See the difference. So obviously you could take a lot of time, add a lot of tertiary details. Let's do one more thing, and you get the idea. I'm not going to spend time modeling here, but you could like use the benefits of the edge flow and sort of the topology. Sometimes you can make kind of nice details. So if I extrude all this portion, you get the idea. I mean, so this comes back to modeling, however far you want to take it. Oops. But normal maps are very forgiving for these sorts of like, yeah, tertiary details. Let's do an edge loop there to keep that curvature. And the poly count on this one really doesn't matter, right? Because it's not going to matter. It's really just going to be baked down. So I could have done similar things to the sides or whatever you want to do. So, but it could make it a little bit more interesting to have some more visual fidelity there, that there's more for the light to interact with. It seems a little more interesting, perhaps. Anyway, so let's just try to bake that, and you sort of get the idea. And yeah, so rendering, transfer maps. So, let's make sure we select the, yeah, so that one's our target. So the low poly one is the target. Yeah, you, yep, okay. Shift select to invert. That's our source. Good idea to freeze transformations and delete history as usual. Normal map. Uh, keeps going to that directory. I don't know why. That's the right one. So, TIFF again, and this time will be, yeah, whatever, like leg, normal map, save. So you see, it's very convenient to have a Maya project, and that because the paths and everything will just kind of work, especially when you start dealing with textures. So let's, okay, 2K, let's try it. But this is how I would approach it. So, or you could just try one bake if you have all these objects and just bake everything at once. So you can combine all the meshes for the low poly and you add that as the target, and you combine everything for the high poly, and or just add several meshes as the source meshes, and then just try one bake. But chances are, I think there might be some errors in the bake. So this would be another way to approach it. You just treat it as individual operations. You do that little bake, you do that little bake, and then you just combine everything like you were starting to do in Photoshop. Just combine all the pieces. So let's try to hide that one. So each time it does the bake, let's see, I don't know if that. That was not awfully successful. Leg. No. Okay. So here we might have to increase the search distance. It's strange that that didn't work. Actually, I'm going to drag this other guy out of the group. That might be... So Shift P, I'm going to drag them out of that group. Not sure why it's finding that so complicated, but that's kind of the nature of baking. So sometimes, yep. Target. So I'm gonna actually try it one more time and then see if we can. So yeah, probably should have named these guys. No. Other way around. Someone's actually snoring. Well, that's what baking will do. You know, I won't judge. That's totally normal. Target. I'm surprised the majority of you. Well, let's do a count. Anyway, so the this would be the source. Yes. Anyway, so yeah, that will kind of work. So we'll see if we got the search envelope. Maybe that will work if we increase it a little bit. I don't know how to make this more interesting because it's not that interesting. 0.8. 8. Anyways, we can go display envelope, and then we'll see the envelope. We'll try to increase it a little bit, 1.2. Normal map, leg, normal map. Yeah, I mean, you know, bake it. But you get the idea. Do several bakes, combine it according to your UV layout. That's sort of it. And you have to do more bakes. I guarantee it. Questions? This is it. And obviously, we will end up with one single normal map for the entire chair. It will only be, let's see if this worked. If it didn't, let's just pretend that it worked. I don't think it actually did it. Let's see. Nope. Yeah, so this one would require some more attention, it seems. I probably would have to place the high poly one a little bit closer, and probably make them intersect a little more like that. Yeah, it would be nice if it worked. But yes, so then you will combine all of them and end up with a single normal map for the entire chair that will be attached to a single material for the entire chair, even though it consists of however many meshes, right? And since this is baking in world space, you can literally put anything there, how many objects you'd like, whatever. You put them on the surface or kind of slightly into the surface, as this guy, and then it's sampling in world space. The UVs for the high poly objects don't matter. The poly count doesn't matter. Let's see. This might be why, because I had it only in subdivision. Actually, number 3, like polygonal preview. So I could try to smooth it, and then we'll try to bake one more time. And then, or not. Yeah, let's try to bake it one more time. Let's see. This is the less interesting process to watch, and you just have to do it, I guess. But also things like the slight bevel information, you could consider baking it, like if you're doing a very low poly game asset. In that case, you could consider also trying to bake the bevel information into a very simple versions, right, of the mesh. So depending on like how far you're pushing the normal map, you know, you might have to work a little harder on getting that perfect bake. But you can have a very low poly object appear quite convincing. You see this pillow, I mean, it's okay for kind of a simple object. And you're saving a lot of poly count, so it's virtually not there. And the illusion worked also kind of because of the design, because we decided that the pillow needed to be kind of small in order to work with the normal map. Because the illusion kind of only works as long as you're observing the entire plane. As long as when I'm here, it kind of it breaks that illusion, right? Anyways, okay. So that's one thing. The other thing I said was that sometimes you could consider actually doing soften edge on the low poly mesh before you bake it. That's to prevent yeah, the kind of polys showing up in the bake, which can happen, which is not nice. Okay, so let's try to bake it one more time. should work. Let's see. That will be exciting. I think I'll just set that down again. Let's just try it. Reset settings. Yes. Yes. Really? Yes. Oh yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Target. No, I guess it's normal. I have no idea. Um, hello. Hello shape. Yep. I don't know. It's probably normal. Good. Good call. I have no clue. Don't know. Here. Yeah. Hi. How shape. Yes. No map. Going to the wrong. No, there's the right. PNG. Oh, let's do it too. And there's something there on the previous make also. Anyways, let's try this. Yes. Yes. Okay, sampling, I guess medium, turn that down. Let's try again. Anyways, it's quite rewarding once you have that kind of low poly object with the normal maps applied. You know, so it's obviously mostly useful for in-game assets, like very low poly objects that you want to have more fidelity, but also for VFX, normal maps are kind of useful if you only have, uh, yeah, little surface detail. Uh, Usually for VFX, you'd use displacement maps, which we're not really going to cover here. But that would essentially be similar. It's just that it would be completely different. But the process would be similar. It's like you have a high poly thing, you have a low poly thing, and then you do the bake. And then you apply the displacement. Uh, yeah. So raw. Yeah, seemed to work. Yes. Yes. So it's probably just because I didn't smooth it. I only had it in like subdivision preview when you press number 3, right? So here you can really start to see that if we compare this, so say 5, 6, see the shaded version. So there can really be quite a significant difference eventually once you start adding all these tertiary details. Make more fidelity. Yeah. So yeah, so in the workflow, like for this chair, I modeled it very simply. Then I did the UVs, and now I'm doing kind of random tertiary details, right? Just random details. That's what you could do that. Um, Another approach, well, I think this is a good approach, like for something like this, kind of simple. But sometimes it's not so simple. So maybe you're doing something very conceptual or just kind of trying things. You can build something very complex, have a very high poly model, like very, very high poly. You don't care so much about the polys. And then at the very end, you do a production period that's all about making the production mesh. So if it's an in-game model and you have a set poly count and you want to have like X number of UV layouts for the asset, these are decisions you can make at the end. You can model everything, do everything, and then you would have to go through a process called kind of what we call a retopologizing, where if you have something, could be anything, and then you make a new mesh for it. That makes sense. So that's more common to do with creatures and characters where you have a sculpt, or also these days hard surface things, which are probably started as a sculpt or something. But you could with anything. So like whatever it is that you have. So this chunk and with, yeah, I'm making a horrible point, but let's see where this goes. So if we combine it, now there's like one object. And I didn't care about the topology at all. It's just like random. It's just made three, whatever. But here I can make it live. Ooh, it's live. It just means that I can snap to it. So as long as that magnet is enabled, this is live. So I can't select it, but I could do things like use quad draw, for instance. So this is like typical of retopologizing. So here I can go in and literally draw and hold shift and make polys. So you see, I can make a very low poly version of this relatively quickly. It's also a technical process, obviously. But this would snap to the surface. So you can imagine I could have however complicated a mesh. Like you can go in there and be really intricate in your modeling. Make something epic. Even though it's for in-game, it really doesn't matter. So then you have the high fidelity version. Now you can output the production mesh. So I think that's a useful mindset because it's kind of two different things. You do need the high fidelity version, and then once you have that, it's very, um, it's good. It's very good for a production to have the high fidelity version, because then you could do things like if you want to do like promotional renders or something, you have that thing there, and you can take it into Arnold or wherever and make a crazy VFX render of the same asset. Or you can update your, now I'm talking more about in-game stuff. So if you want to update, depending on the specs of your game, you could do an output for a mobile game, or you can do an output for like a AAA next gen super duper version. And it would be the same kind of art content, but you're just outputting different things. Anyways, so that's more of a topic that we're doing in CGR 2. So there, the process is kind of turned on its head and just start with the artwork, and that would be more about sculpting, so more about digital sculpting and just really getting started with crazy high detail creatures and things like that. And then all of this, like retopologizing UVs and all of that, comes at the very end. So it's kind of the opposite, right? But for this course, I'm just mentioning this right now because just to kind of leave you with that thought. Because in this course, it makes more sense to build things kind of starting with a primitive city. You build blocks and you kind of build things up, and then you arrive at something great, and then you're done. But that's not necessarily always the pipeline or the order of things. So, yeah. But it's also kind of liberating to know that you can turn anything into anything, right? So whatever complex object you have, this is an interesting approach. So when I made that object live, and I'm left with this simple piece, it's just a really standard polygonal plane. I can subdivide it. I would make UVs for it, and then I could bake the high poly version down to the low poly version as a normal map. And I could bake it in world space. In other words, right in here. Literally, this would be the target, this would be the source, boom. No, not necessarily. You would have to do a lot of, work to get a nice bake, usually. Not necessarily. Sometimes the bakes work nice. So that's kind of it for baking, and we could talk more about texturing a little bit in Photoshop now, but I don't think we will because we don't really have much time anyways. So for this course, though, the texturing element is very simple. So I if you try this process and you have a finalized UV layout for your asset, in this case the asset is very simple, it's a chair, but it has multiple meshes, so it's not necessarily so simple the first time you do it to sort of get this mindset. But you can have as many meshes as you want. It's just organized into one layout, and it has where's that? It has a uniform texel density. Talked about last time, I guess, with the yeah, where's that? The checkerboard when we apply the checkers. These are to scale. None of these will differ greatly from the other ones. That means the asset will have a uniform resolution throughout the object. Uh, so this is actually also important, like if you have a scene. So this is another asset. Let's say you're building a table next to the chair, which you will be doing, right? When you have been doing. Then you have to be mindful of the total textile density in your scene. So if this guy has a completely different resolution and it's right next to the chair, that's problematic. So this is also something to kind of start getting used to. Um, oops. So if I scale the UVs for this guy way down, we can see that the checkers no longer match. These checkers are much larger than these, right? What does that mean? The resolution on this one is different. In what way? Yeah, so the resolution is lower on this. So if you scale the UVs down, they're occupying less space, right? If you scale the UVs down, they're occupying less space. And if they're occupying less space, they're showing fewer pixels. So I can scale them way down and have them all kind of inside this red little pixel stuff in there, and now it should be kind of all red. Very, very, very. Now it's a highly it's not a uniform textile density. There's a horrible correlation between these two objects. Because when I render this or whatever you want to do with this scene right now, this is going to look horrible next to this. And since we never want anything to look horrible, the closest thing, well, let's make this a little bit more kind of a useful example. So let's say, oops, let's say the difference were like that. Okay, so we can't go this close on this object because it looks pixelated. Maybe we can go that close. Well, that's as close as we're going to get. I mean, as we want to get, because we never want anything to look pixelated. And that means, wow, this we can't even see this. So it means you're wasting a whole lot of data on this chair that you don't need. So that's the problem with ununiform textile density, is that even though you go out here, so you make sure nothing is pixelated, you're wasting data, right? So in your scene, you should take the time to consider textile density throughout the various assets. It just means kind of that they're in the same ballpark. You don't have to, it's not like rocket science. It doesn't need to be super accurate. It's kind of more or less in the same realm, right? So that they're not completely different resolution. It's a little bit kind of to wrap your heads around, but it's worth noting. So it's not only the textile density between the meshes of the single asset, but also between the assets in the scene. Right? Makes sense? So have you gotten started on the UV mapping? You're underway? Doing good? No? No, no. Oh, yes. Any questions about UVs then, or are you... Yes. Yeah. So you just select all the objects, then go image, UV snapshot. It saves whichever format you want here. PNG, whatever, 2K. Yep. It's literally that's what you get. It's like a screenshot of 0 to 1. Yeah. So, yeah, but if you get to that stage where you have a uniform textile density and you manage to bake nice normal maps, it's a very, very good starting point, I think, for you. If some of you want to like continue on and take this further and get started with like Substance Painter or like other texturing applications, which just makes a little bit more sense than necessarily spending too much time, I think, today, or I mean, these days, kind of texturing old school way. Yeah. Uh, so your question is, yeah, I didn't understand. Oh, the seams? No, the object, like this object, for instance, where would I? Oh, a very complex object. Like, how would you unwrap it? Hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry, my brain is not catching up with your speed. Yes, if that's your question. I'm not sure. If it's where to place seams, is that what you're talking about though? No, I didn't. Your Vespa, yes. Hmm. Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah, okay, right. So, the layout and sort of the way you organize the different shells and how many shells and where to cut it and etc. This varies. There's no formula. Right. So the main thing is, or used to be very important, still is kind of important, is that you have human readable UVs and keep to a large extent large UV shells. So if you have the handle, but maybe you want to keep that as a UV shell, there's no rule that's going to come in and dictate how you want to do that. It's just if you can try to maintain large UV shells, like continuous UV shells, used to be more important because it used to be that you would go in here and texture more manually in Photoshop. These days, a lot of texturing is kind of happening in 3D, like with Substance Painter or ZBrush or whatever, or Mari. And then the texture is actually 3D. It's in 3D space. So when you export the texture, you don't have to worry as much about the seams, right? So if you don't have to worry about the seams, in other words, we could just go like whatever. We could, and technically we can. You can just go like that. And say, nah, UVs, whatever, Uh, and that's it. And then you export that, and that would you would bake the normal map or displacement map or whatever based on those UVs, and also the textures coming from Painter or anywhere else. They would be baked down to UVs, which would not be human readable. They would just be technically okay. They're like there's no distortion, there's no overlap, they're within the region, right? So technically, you could literally just unwrap every single poly and just place them perfectly in 0 to 1, boom, and that's it. You would have no UV shells. They would not be human readable. When you would open a texture file, you would just see like dots of color here and there, right? So you'd have a whole lot of seams. But technically today you can actually do that because seams are kind of less of an issue, but technically if we don't have to do that, we wouldn't do that. So we still, just to maintain kind of a technical standard, we keep, if you can hide the seams, you hide the seams, right? If you can make the cut behind the wheel or steering, whatever, you place it where it's less visible, just as a precaution. And then you have a whole UV shell just because it's nice, because it's human readable. And it's a technically much better solution, because why not? It's a little bit more work, but it's not that much more work. It's a little bit more work. You have to make the UVs and so forth, but it's actually very forgiving. Like once you get used to unwrapping and stuff, like, throw it into Hedis, or the tools here are getting pretty good. So that's kind of, and then like the layout, like the placement of the shells once you have them unwrapped, it's also kind of, it depends. Okay, so actually, if it's an in-game asset, right, then typically you would see a very, very optimized, more optimized than this. So here I mentioned that there's empty space. We don't want that. So this would be more optimized. What we're gaining, if I would be able to even compact this a little bit more, is that I would be able then to utilize this empty space to scale everything up a little bit. So we would gain resolution for the same amount of data, right? So the same amount of data would give you much more resolution. And then you would also do things like, I don't think the character will ever go under here, so I would just scale this shell way down, right? I would, on purpose, introduce a non-uniform textile density in some areas because I'm saving space. Not here. I don't want to save here. So I would have to cut this in a different way. This would also dictate where I should place the seams and so forth. Here, it would make sense to have this as a separate UV shell, and then I would scale that part way down. Probably half resolution at least. You want something there. Like for an in-game asset, I wouldn't delete those faces even though you're not seeing them, because they might be visible or they will be visible in reflection. So it's also important for light bounds and reflection that there's something there. But probably you don't really need that high resolution there. So this becomes very important for in-game highly optimized UVs. And so, but if it were a VFX asset, it would be very different. If the Vespa were to be in a commercial or something and dancing, and it would be rendered at 4K or whatever, if it's in cinemas, then it would be different. You would utilize, it would be very different. You'd have more UDIMs, which we're not going to talk about in this class, but it's like several, see here, we have even more UV regions. So it would no longer be at all, the mindset would not be, oh, we have to optimize every single, no, it's like, how can we have a crazy amount of resolution? So if you have like a VFX hero asset or creature or a Vespa, dancing Vespa, uh, it would literally have, it could have like 100 8K maps, right? So it's like completely different mindset for the UVs. Hmm. Yeah, I would not delete it, no. Yep, because you can what? Yeah. Yeah, you deleted them and then it was a bug in your game. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, you can get rid of faces that you're absolutely sure, like here, if if the chair would never explode or something, which sounds stupid, but you'd have to think about it if it's a game. Like, what's the interaction with the object? Are you going to shoot the chair and it explodes? There would need to be faces there. But if you're absolutely sure that it's a static object or it's not dynamic in that sense, you can delete these, of course. That's technically no problem. And then literally just tuck it in there, and they could even like intersect there. It's technically no problem at all. So that's totally fine, and that's very common. Also, if you're sure it's a static object and it's always going to be on the ground, yeah, you could delete these. Yeah, no problem. I would keep them because it just makes it a more useful asset. You could tilt the chair over if you wanted to, you know. And you couldn't do that if it didn't have polys there, because then you're seeing the back faces. And then it would be kind of invisible in your game, right? Yeah, so yeah, good questions. So that's kind of the like logical how you arrange these things. There are a few rules. It's just you have to sort of apply your own judgment and sort of logic, right? I guess. Yes. Other questions? Everyone's awake. Good. Mm, thinking. Yeah. So, anyways, you get the idea. So here, arrange different things together to fit the layout. Mm, yeah. So similar for a color map. That was kind of. We have 5 minutes. That's a final little thing I just want to leave you with, because, like I said, in this course, if you want, you just do a very simple color map. Uh, like I said, I think this is the most important thing. Like, you have the object, you have solid UVs, you try to make a normal map, and there you have a really great starting point for Painter or other texturing pipelines. So I'd rather have you spend more time at that, and that's also sort of the way the assessment is weighted. So, uh, but so a very simple color map then would be, just to do a high level texture. Um, you all know what I'm talking about, or should we, should I show you how to set up a high level texture? Yes. Okay. So, yes. So a high level texture is just a seamless texture map. So if you go to textures.com or other places, a lot of the textures you'll actually see are tileable. So if you go to wood, let's just do fine wood, and just, yeah, like whatever. Like, okay. This is not a one-to-one though, so that's not tileable. Probably could be. Maybe not. Yeah. So there it says seamless. So that seamless. So seamless, another word for tileable. It means that this could just be tiled. Uh, I don't know if I remember this. No. Yay. Free. Yeah, so did you download some texture packs or textures? No? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So maybe you want to share them with the group or something, or you want to, I don't know. Yeah, whatever you want to do. You can also pay this site, for instance, a little bit. Okay. Baking. So this one I can just pop right in there. Let's just rename it. So this could be cherry wood tile or something. Let's have a look at it in Photoshop. There it is. There's a little feature here in Photoshop called Filter, Other, Offset. This will actually offset the frame, the canvas, the corners of the image. So offset. So when I'm starting to offset, you can see that you can see that it seems like it just continues forever. Like there's no, where's the end? Where's the frame? And that's the point, because it's seamless. So you can't really see it. So that's how you can actually make any texture if you wanted to try to make your own seamless texture. Yeah, you could do that. So like the clone, what is spot healing brush is pretty good now, or do different layers and blah blah blah. Let me show you then. No, let me not. Anyways, I'll, it's a very simple process of like I don't really have time now, but we'll do the offset and then you can make your own seamless textures. But anyways, so the way you would use this, just so you know, there's nothing magical. It's just like that's how you can make it, and then it just happens to be that you can't really tell where the ends are. So if we hook that up to the color, just on a Lambert, I turn off the filter type, and that's always going to this directory. So it shouldn't do that because I want to set, I actually made this project. So if you're experiencing that it's going to the wrong directory, you need to set the project. So set project, and then just go to, so that you're within the project folder, and then set. Now this should go directly to, yeah, so now it's going to the right source. So with tile, so if we take a look in, yeah, so we can also, here we can navigate between the different nodes. So here I'm like navigating, or here. Anyways, let's open up the Hypershade. I'm gonna, yeah, so it's this one, and I can graph input connections. This is gonna show me what's going into this material, right here. So this is the file node. It has a wood tile. This time we're gonna leave it in sRGB because this is an sRGB image. So yeah, again, larger topic with a linear workflow and everything. But here it is sRGB UV tiling. We don't have to worry about that. This we would have. This is for like multi-UDIM things for VFX. Anyways, so that should work. But then we have this node, place 2D texture node. This decides the tiling. And here there's something called repeat UV. So here we can tile this texture several times across the chair. So if I go repeat UV 4 times 4, it's a little much. So you see, that's tiling. So it will become apparent, like you saw there. If I go like too much, it sort of starts breaking apart. You can sort of see the repetition. And let's see, I don't really use that too much, but you can go and, is it rotate frame? No, that's rotating everything. Okay. Stagger? Yeah, stagger will kind of help to differentiate that pattern a little bit. Anyways, that's tileable textures. You can use the place 2D texture node to quickly repeat the UVs. That's really how we kind of would use tileable textures. And then, of course, we could still apply the normal map obviously the color map, color the normal map on the bump node. Didn't we make another one? Yeah. Anyways, so then we'd set this to raw. No. So yeah, but you can also obviously do the same approach with the color maps. You bring textures into your Photoshop document and you start kind of tweaking the colors to match your 3D object. So if you do that, I would keep it kind of simple for the assignment because the texturing aspect is not the most crucial for this course. But if you want, you can. I think I'll upload like a lecture on texturing, like just old school texturing if you want to have a look at it. So we're not going to cover that here, but I'll just upload that. So just talking about like color map, you could do a transparency map if you wanted to, or incandescence would be like, or emissive is another word. Like if you wanted to have self-illumination or something that would be glowing, you could do that. You can do that with these simple shaders, and the mindset would be the same also for like BPR or slightly more advanced shaders. But I think that's kind of optional for this course, and so I'll upload that lecture if you are interested. So, questions? So I'll upload that texture. I do recommend watching it actually because it might make things a little bit more clear and like how you go back and forth from Photoshop, Maya, things like that. But I think currently you're currently working with UVs, I guess that's where you're at, and then you're kind of finalizing the UVs. And so that needs to be properly done so that you will not have errors baking. So once you have a finalized layout, then start trying to bake. Yep. So I'll be on the labs tonight if you want to drop by there. What I'll do is I just basically get some work done there, so I'm just available if you have questions from three and yeah tonight basically. If you want to drop by, ask me anything. But that's it for this course. It's kind of the last lecture we'll do here, and then you have until December 6th to deliver. So I will look over the stuff, and you've sort of. It's really the deliveries here. The only thing I look for if it's something like critical that I think you really need to add in order maybe not to fail, and I would let you know, and I will let you know very shortly. If it didn't deliver here, then too bad. Then you will not get that. Then you'll have to deliver here and cross your fingers, or come talk to me, or whatever you want to do. If you want to run your projects by me and ask me any questions you want, that could be good to do tonight because I'm there. I'm also there tomorrow night and Friday. So Inspira. So this everything will be delivered again. Everything. So you can make any changes you want to any of these and do whatever you want to anything and deliver everything to Inspira. And you will get some information about Inspira from the student services people. Oh, that's an excellent question. No, they'll be separate. Yeah. Yep. So, but there will be, you will see that in the Inspira thing. It'll be pretty clear, I think. No, it's upload. You just upload the PDF to Inspira. Yeah. It's very important to get it in there. If you don't, you will fail, fortunately. So you have to deliver through Inspira. Very important. Okay, but that's December 6th. Should be good. I think you'll be good. You have to keep working. So thank you. I will see you if you show up. If not, I will not. Bye.